Hello, and welcome to another live chapter reading of Written in the Stars by Angela Christina Archer, as brought to you by Itsy Bitsy Book Beds. Chapter 1, Betty, November 1949. Our parents talk about our bright futures from the moment we are born. Of course, we know nothing of what we will grow up to be. A doctor, a lawyer, a homemaker, or perhaps we will become someone who changes the world. I doubt Albert Einstein's parents knew he would grow up to be a genius, or that Charlie Chaplin's parents could foresee how famous their son would be. I doubt Mr. and Mrs. Herman Ruth thought, as they took George home from the hospital, that he would be one of the greatest baseball players in the game. While my parents never told me outright about the future they saw or planned for me, their offhand comments told me otherwise, especially when my acceptance to Wellesley College for the next fall came in the mail. It was 1950, and while they had one plan for me, I had a different one. What I didn't know was how my own plans would change in one night, and how my bright future would turn into a dark sea of secrets, loss, pain, and sorrow. So, what are you gonna do? Pamela hugged her school books against her chest as she walked alongside me. Her question was the same one I'd asked myself at least a dozen times in the last several weeks, and it was the same one I couldn't answer. 17. 16 weeks pregnant. What was a young woman my age and in my condition supposed to do? While I knew how I'd found myself in this predicament, I didn't know how I would find my way out of it. I don't know. My words were nothing more than whispers on breath as I glanced up at the sky, willing for God or Jesus, or at least my guardian angel, for heaven's sake, to help me, show me the way, or give me a sign as to the path I should travel down. With my own school books tucked under my arm, the November chill in Charleston, South Carolina had me wishing I'd brought a coat to school. Mama had told me to grab one, but I didn't want to listen to her anymore, especially after she'd lectured me, again, about how I should and shouldn't wear my hair. But I'm going to have to figure out something. School books and sweaters aren't going to work soon. I brushed my reddish curls away from my face, and the gentle breeze blew one back. It landed on my eyelashes. Not to mention, after Thanksgiving, Mama has all these holiday parties planned. She's going to want me in all these fancy dresses she's bought. I swear, I've already outgrown a few of them. I glanced down, rubbing my hand on the tiny bump where my flat stomach once was. I could still somewhat hide it when I was home with my parents or going to school, but I knew I wouldn't be able to for much longer. Not with the holidays coming up. When was the last time you spoke to Charlie? Pamela's eyebrows furrowed, and she smacked her gum, chewing like a cow chews their cud. The sound and smell of the soft pink gum churned in my stomach. I'd fought morning sickness throughout my pregnancy, and while it had eased some in the last few weeks, certain smells still made me want to retch. Other than the letters we've been writing, I spoke to him the other night on the telephone. He says he wants me to leave Charleston, and for him to leave Savannah, and for us both to move to Alabama, to a small town outside Montgomery. Why Alabama? Pamela's nose crinkled as though she smelled something rotten. Ignoring her expression, I waved my hand. He's got a cousin who offered him a job in some iron mill or steel mill, I'm not sure. He's thinking if he has a job, we can find us a tiny house, get married, and be a family. But you're only 17. A fact I am, unfortunately, aware of, Pamela. My voice growled in my chest. But if we just left, then what can my parents do? I'd be 18 in a few months, and then there's nothing stopping us from getting married. Then we can be together forever. What about Wellesley? I snorted a laugh. Yeah, you think my parents are going to pay for Wellesley after they find out? Besides, this job in Alabama, not Massachusetts. They might pay. As long as you two get married, then I don't see why they should get so upset. You're forgetting one important thing. I lifted my hand and wiggled my index finger in front of her face. Daddy doesn't like Charlie, and neither does Mama. What do you think your parents will say when you tell them about the baby and getting married? I don't know. I closed my eyes for a moment, not wanting to think about what their reaction would be. My parents, caught up in the outward appearance that they, the rich, the stoic, and perfect Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton, could never have such a shame placed upon them. I spent my entire life playing a role in that image. Mama's quintessential daughter. I couldn't imagine her parading my belly around all her friends with a beam of pride on her lips. Nor did I want to think about it. And Daddy? He cared more for his business connections and his lumber company than for me. Even if he'd made his opinion known about Charlie, several times in fact, of course, I don't know what he thought he was protecting more. Me from someone he deemed unworthy, or his and the family's reputation. His educated, headed to Wellesley daughter should be with a Harvard man, not the son of an oil worker who had no intention of setting foot on college campus. So does that mean you aren't going to tell him? Are y'all just going to run away to Alabama then? I don't know. I just don't know. Pamela and I rounded the street corner to Murray Boulevard, just another several hundred yards from my house. My stomach clenched and my throat tightened. I hated lying to my parents, and I hated keeping such a secret from them. While our relationship hadn't been what it was when I was little, I still loved them. They were my family, and the only ones I got besides Charlie. With him hundreds of miles away in Savannah, though, it was just me and them, like it always been for the last 16 years. They weren't always ones to care what others thought, or at least if they were, I didn't notice when I was young. I only noticed when I was about 13, and Mama and Daddy joined the club, and Mama came home with not only a new wardrobe for me, but for her. Dresses, gloves, even hats, they all screamed money, and lots of it. I want you to keep track of how many times you wear each of them to the club, she had said. Once you've worn them about 10 times, they go in the trash, and we will buy you something new. We can't be seen wearing the same clothes over and over again. That's just unsophisticated. Unsophisticated. One of her favorite words. And one she used often when gossiping about someone she looked down upon, which was usually everyone else in the room. She would throw it around like someone using the word the or was, pointing at people she deemed less than. When I was young, I didn't care. Having not known any different, I'd done what she said, watching how often I'd wear a dress or making sure my hair was always tidy and never out of place. Not to mention, what a young girl wouldn't love weekly manicures and pedicures. A few of my friends at school had never even set foot in a salon, and here I was getting my hair and nails done every week. Why would any little girl complain about that? As I got older, however, I started looking at things differently. I'd lost friendships over some of my opinions or how I'd acted. And after I threw a fit over Mama tossing one of my favorite dresses, that's when I took a step back and looked at how I'd changed. It was also when I discovered the joy of a summer spent at Silver Wind Camp, 3 months away from my parents and the club, as well as 3 months of time spent with friends who didn't care about Daddy's bank account. Friends I only saw in the summer, including Charlie, my fiance, and the love of my life. Well, if you need a place to stay, I can probably sneak you into my room for a few days. I don't think it'll come to that. Charlie said in his last letter he would call on the 18th, which is tonight, so I think we'll discuss a plan. Is he still coming to visit his grandparents for Thanksgiving? I nodded. He should be here in a few days. So y'all will either tell your parents or y'all will just run away? While I wanted to give Pamela an answer, I couldn't. I didn't have one. I let out a sigh, closing my eyes for a moment as my arms clenched tighter around my school books. I said, I don't know. I don't know what we're going to do, but I'm hoping we can figure it out soon. I paused for another second, biting my lip as I rubbed my belly once more. Or I suppose I should say we need to figure it out soon. As we neared the house, Pamela laid her hand on my shoulder, giving me a last sideways glance before she continued down the sidewalk, vanishing behind Old Man Perry's white picket fence and perfectly trimmed hedges. Even though it was November, they still had their green leaves, only this time of year, the season of fall decorated them with a few bright leaves that had fallen from the crepe myrtle trees above. The crimson colors, in different shades of light and dark, clashed with the palmetto trees behind the hedges, and it was something that always made me giggle as I walked down Murray Boulevard. South Carolina was nothing like North Carolina, and the hundreds and hundreds of acres of Silver Wind Camp with their luscious forests, deep lakes, rolling mountains, where early morning fog would settle until the sun burned off the clouds. Instead, South Carolina, and especially Charleston, reminded me more of a tropical place, or at least my neighborhood did. With palmetto, southern magnolia, and weeping willow trees lining the plantation and antebellum-style homes that overlooked the Ashley River. Mama had always dreamed of living here, and it wasn't long after I'd turned 10 that Daddy fulfilled that dream. To me, it was nothing but the same walls and windows I'd come home to for a good part of my life. Beautiful, but not perfect in my eyes. It lacked the feeling of home I longed for. Like a comfortable blanket you want to snuggle down inside on a chilly day. Instead, it felt abrasive and as hard to the notions of affection as the bricks that made up its body. 3 floors of a plantation-style home, it had 4 columns that rose from the ground and continued all the way to the top deck. Securing the 2 balconies to the front, their wrought iron railings, ones I'd often, when I was young of course, dreamed of standing near when a cute boy came to calling. You know, those foolish notions of a little girl parading back and forth on the deck each night in one of her mama's dresses that she shouldn't be wearing, but snuck out of the closet anyway. A pair of heels, 2 sizes too big for her feet, and several strands of her mama's pearls draped over her neck. The thought of myself back then brought a giggle of laughter to my chest, and I couldn't help but smile. Life seemed so much simpler when I was young and innocent, naive to exactly what went on between a man and a woman. Not that my ignorance was better. There wasn't a second that went by that I regretted being with Charlie. I loved him, and I wanted to marry him, just as he loved me and wanted to marry me. The bright sun reflected off the white painted gate of our brick and iron fence, brightening the green hedges that lined it and the walkway from the sidewalk to the front door. I didn't know how I would feel leaving this place after all these years, but I knew I would be fine going anywhere as long as I was with Charlie. With a skip to my step, I moved through the gate, latching it behind me before I trotted up the stairs, smoothed my dress, and tucked my school books tight into my belly. My hand clasped the doorknob, and with a twist, the door popped open. The clicking of my shoes echoed across the hardwood floor as I glanced toward the grand staircase that greeted me on the other side of the door. Light caught through the colors of the stained glass at the top, raining hints of color down upon the white painted wood and marble stairs. "Mama?" I called out. No one answered. A glint of hope fluttered in my chest. Home alone, I could sneak a bite to eat and then retreat to my room where I could hide away for the rest of the night, claiming I had tons of homework or a long book report to do or some important test to study for. As I set my house key on the table in the foyer, I noticed a couple suitcases leaning against the legs. More curious still, they were my suitcases, and I reached out for them, grazing my fingers along the leather. "Is that you, Elizabeth?" Mama's sudden voice caused me to flinch, and I straightened up and spun on my heel, facing her as she sauntered down the stairs. Her hips rocked with each step, and she slowly slid on her driving gloves as she walked. "Ah, it is you. You are late, as usual." "I am? I didn't think I was late." "No matter. Set your books down on the table. Gretchen will take them upstairs." "Actually, I can take them. I have lots of homework, so I might just stay in my bedroom through dinner if that's all right." I tried to move past her, but she reached out and grabbed my arm. "Not tonight. Come with me." "Where are we going?" "That's for me to know, and you to find out. Now set your books down." She released my arm and spun, calling for Mr. Thompson, our butler, to fetch my bags. "Follow me, Elizabeth." Although I asked her several more times where we were going, she ignored me, letting the heels of her shoes on the hardwood floor do the talking as she led me down the hallway, through the kitchen, and out the back door. The motor car sat in front of the garage, running. I could hear the engine below the hood purr. Are you gonna ever answer me, or are you just gonna ignore me? She grabbed the handle of the passenger door and spun to face me, her teeth clenched. Just get in the car. Over the years, I'd seen Mama angry a time or two. Only behind closed doors would she lose the calm demeanor she clung to like a sick person clings to medicine. If surrounded by people, she would clench her teeth, gnashing them together while she pretended not to care or notice the thing which had grated on her every nerve. I slid into the passenger seat, and she slammed the door before marching around to the front of the car, climbing in the driver's seat and waiting for Mr. Thompson to put the bags in the trunk. Putting the vehicle into reverse, she backed out of the driveway. Throwing it into drive with so much force, the stick shift grunted in objection. She sped down the street, her foot pressed hard to the gas pedal. Are you going to tell me where we're going? We aren't going anywhere, young lady. You are going somewhere, but you're going alone. What's that supposed to mean? She drove several more miles, just snorting to herself as though her thoughts shocked her and she didn't believe them. She said not a word, though. And by the tone of her voice and anger in her eyes, I didn't know whether I should push the issue further or if I should just say nothing more and wait for her to speak. I chose the latter. That's all for today.